I'm Thad Brown. He's Carl Jones. We are the Siskel and Ebert of Bills film breakdowns, only without the thumbs up, thumbs down stuff, and we argue less, which is generally helpful for the whole broadcast and hopefully helpful for you. Talking about the Bills and the Steelers after both of us went through the All-22, looking at different parts of the game, and obviously the Bills just obliterated the Steelers, and there were so many good things in the game. We'll get to a few of them here, but I think the most interesting kind of inside game breakdown was Kyer Elam, who, after having some good stats in his favor, we kind of sat here and told you the last couple of weeks that, yeah, it's not bad, but not nearly as good as it was made out to be. He had a really tough game against the Steelers. Now, I will say this, and I want you're the Division I corner, so this is your expertise, your wheelhouse. I thought early in the game the Steelers had game plan for him. I mean, they were rolling pockets at him just to throw at him short all day long, and he just could not keep up with George Pickens at first, Deontay Johnson a little bit, but it was mostly Pickens. So it's not like he was having trouble with Devontae Adams, or Tyreek Hill. This is a really talented rookie, but a rookie just like him, and a lower drafted rookie for whatever that's worth. I thought in the second half, though, Carl, and mostly in garbage time, I thought he got a little bit better and looked like a guy I don't want to say you can depend on, but it wasn't nearly as bad as it was in the first half.
Yeah, that first half was pretty rough. And I guess his scouting report coming into the league is that he's a press guy, loves to get his hands on you. And in that Steelers game, that scouting report came to fruition because he's not able to do that in the league because Leslie Frazier relies on the corners to do so much more than just press man, get into your face. And all that staying on top of the receiver, press bail, pedaling, it came up to fruition in this game against the Steelers, especially on some of those recognition routes, right? Where, for example, there's no one else on your side of the field but you and that receiver. You don't need to bail out of there 100 miles an hour. You can throttle it down a little bit because that's your only threat. And he's not used to doing that. And I mean, Florida, hey, you know what you got to do? Go guard him and follow him all around the field. Mm-hmm. He's not used to some of the more zone, recognition routes and being a little heady out there a little bit. So that was the first thing I noticed. It's like, bro, slow down a little bit. That's your only threat. And then the other thing, on the play where Pickens made or some of the sideline throws where Deontay Johnson made, he just has to make the play. And a lot of that just comes with confidence and just repetitions and just being out there. He was there, especially on the Pickens play. You were in phase, in his wheelhouse right there.
The deep one, the 20-yarder down the field? Yeah.
You were right there. Now just go make the play. Mm-hmm. And it would be a concern if he wasn't in the vicinity of Pickens right there. Like that play honestly I really wasn't too worried about that play. So it was the other plays where he didn't trust his feet. He didn't get out the break clean. Those are some of the plays where I'm like, well, we got to clean that up, be more confident in our feet like we talked about in training camp. But the play with Pickens, taking him up top, that's the league. Even Jalen Ramsey's going to get dunked on.
Right.
But it's the plays where, hey, man, throttle it down a little bit, slow down. Like you said, in the second half, the game began to slow down a little bit. He was on some of those throws, those hitches, those stop routes where he made plays on the ball and Pickett was a little more hesitant to go his direction.
So I think some encouragement there. I mean, this is probably what you look at from a rookie, maybe not a first-round rookie. You might hope a first-round rookie is more prepared, but regardless, this is game 5 for the guy in the NFL. And, like you said, guys will dunk on you in the league. I think George Pickens is going to dunk on a lot of guys before he's all said and done here with the Steelers. So, again, it's not a terrible receiver. Another guy I want to talk about here who's been a very tough evaluation for me so far is pass rusher Greg Rousseau. If you go to Pro Football Focus, they love him. Before the last game, they said, if you take out stunts in games and all the weird stuff, just edge rusher on tackle, he's the number 2 most successful guy in the NFL. And this week I looked at a couple of graphs that they put out. They're still very, very high on him. If you look at those graphs that have the dots, right? His dots are with like Trey Hendrickson and the Bosa brothers, to where you're talking about the elite of edge rushers. I haven't seen anything close to that this year. When I watch him week to week to week, he's certainly better than last year. But he's got 5 plays this year where he has sacks. And on 4 of them, I think there's 50 guys in the NFL who make that play. You got the fumble in the Rams game, a couple stunts. But there's no doubt he's getting better. And I thought this Steelers game was a great example of that because for almost 3 quarters, he was invisible in the pass rush. A little push here, nothing real big. Then all of a sudden, late in the 3rd quarter, he takes the Steelers tackle, Okorafor, I think is how you say his last name. This is a guy who's been a 2-year starter. He's probably entrenched as a starter for the Steelers. I don't know how good he is, but he's a starter. And he had him in a blender for about 4 or 5 plays in a row, 2 different drives. So I don't think Rousseau is quite the pass rusher that maybe PFF has him as right now, as elite, top 5. But last year when he was almost doing nothing, he's way ahead of that too. Give me your – I don't know how much he stuck out to you, but what was your take on Rousseau in this game?
He's a guy who does his 1/11th, and I know that's so, like, player speak. Sean McDermott says it about once a week about just doing your job, but he seems to do that, and I feel like that's all that the Bills need him to do at this point because they got Von Miller to be the home run hitter, to be the guy who cleans things up in the fourth quarter. Rousseau, he's clearly not bad this year. He's doing his job. He has 5 sacks. I mean, I know they might not be the most impressive sacks, but the stat sheet is the stat sheet, right? And he's doing what he's called upon to do. So I think I don't want to say middle ground because he's clearly impressing this year. He's not Parsons, Bosa, Von Miller, and some of the stats may suggest. But he's not where he was last year, like you alluded to. So I think in the running game, he's clearly, that was his MO last year. He's improving in that as well. But, I mean, I'm not really relying upon Greg Rousseau on 3rd and 8 to, hey, go get him. And
yeah, without being able to see everybody else in the league, I don't think he's even at, like, the Jerry Hughes level right now to where, dependable, not spectacular. We'll see how it goes through the year. One thing I did like from this game is before this game, his only move really was a bull rush. In this game, he was making a nice move to the inside that got him in a couple different plays. The more moves you put into the game, the more it makes everything else good. The one thing I want to ask you, though, and as someone who played in, and I hate to bring this up, a number of blowouts with Syracuse University, when you're looking at this, so for example, in this game, there was a good quarter and a half where we're watching a game with a 35-point blowout. So this tackle that Rousseau is beating when it's 38-3, if you're a young guy and you're playing in garbage time and you don't get much playing time, you want to put down good tape. I assume you're going all out. What do you think the give a bleep level is for this tackle who's been in the league for a little while, probably has a spot locked up, in terms of when I see Greg Rousseau dusting this guy, how seriously do we take it because the score is 38-3 at that time?
I think football is the one sport where every minute counts because it's such a dangerous and violent game that every single time that you're out there, it can be your last play. So I know that even like as a DB, for example, I'm not you weren't in the collision every single play. But God forbid you rested on this play because it's the fourth quarter and a lot of things aren't happening. But that'll be the one play that George picking dunks on you, or B, you're not ready and the receiver flatlines you, put you on your back, or a tackle comes out and cleans you. So I'm not going to say that he was intentively locked in as he was in the first quarter, but you best believe he cared because, A, no one likes putting out bad tape. I mean, the Monday morning coach film, he's going to have that little red dot and be like, hey, this is you, buddy? This is you? This is you? Mm-hmm. So I'm sure it wasn't as high as it was in the first quarter, but
really high though.
Yeah, he cared, for sure.
Yeah, I just want to see, as someone who was in those games, what's the mentality like? Offensive line, let's talk about that a little bit. I thought in terms of pass blocking, which look, they don't do a whole lot of run blocking, and they're still not very good at it. But in the pass game, I thought this was definitely one of their better games. Look, the Steelers brought a lot of blitzes. I thought they were pretty creative in the blitzes. And when you bring that many blitzes, you're going to get a few home. And they did in this game too. But I thought the Bills did a nice job picking them up in general. More important, one-on-one in general, right across the board. Brown, Saffold, Morse, Dion, Bates. I thought all those guys against what at least is touted to be a pretty good defensive line were solid. I mean, Alex Highsmith was a non-entity in this game.
Yeah, and I know that T.J. Watt not being there, arguably one of the best players in the league. Actually, not arguably, he is one of the best players in the league. And I know that their level of play drops when he's not out there. But the Steelers still have Cameron Hayward out there, who's a future, Hall of Famer, whatever you want to call it, all-pro at worst. Highsmith, like you alluded to. And this Bills team, I don't want to say the bar was the floor in terms of the offensive line, but we were kind of concerned on how far could you go with the offensive line that maybe not be a strength. In this game, I don't think there were any question marks in that regard.
And I think you don't have those deep plays down the field without an O-line. And there's also the 98-yarder, Tommy Sweeney's involved in that too, being able to block long enough for those plays to happen. Let's talk about the big plays too. There's something the Bills offense hasn't seen the last couple weeks. We talked about the fact that the Ravens and Dolphins both like to drop into 2 high, even 3 high zones and really force the Bills to stay in front of them. The Steelers didn't really do that. They did a decent amount of man. The 62-yarder looked like a zone that really, the Steelers covered that play. Gabe Davis just was the bigger man and took the ball away. But the 98-yarder was an attack kind of man/zone D. The Shakir touchdown was a man play. There's a decent amount of plays where the Steelers went man, probably more than, if you're a defensive coordinator and you're watching what Miami and Baltimore did the last 2 weeks, I wonder what Pittsburgh was thinking. You do what you do, and they're more of a man team to begin with, but it seemed like it burned them in this game.
KYP, know your personnel. So what I mean by that is the Steelers clearly don't have the DBs outside of Mika Fitzpatrick to go one-on-one I don't know about any team in the league, let alone the Bills team, where that's a strength. So I was kind of confused with all the single high looks, which is basically Minka Fitzpatrick in the center of the field, and like you said,
6 guys underneath.
Yeah, and I genuinely don't know. So, I mean, if I'm Ken Dorsey and the Bills, you know what? I'm going to take advantage of the fact that you have lesser personnel in front of me and you're not helping them out. You're putting them on islands. So the Steelers' game plan confused me. I was watching it back. It looked even worse than what I thought it was on TV. So the Bills took advantage of those same type of looks against the Titans and Rams week 1 and 2. And, I mean, I guess the book is out. Do not play that much single high look against the Bills because Josh Allen will burn you.
Yeah, I mean, if you go man and you go single high and give them opportunities down the field, I mean, Josh Allen's deep ball accuracy, and I can tell you on the field, it wasn't super windy, but for balls 60 yards in the air, those were not easy throws, and he put them both on dimes, the 98-yarder and the 62-yarder. You talk about Ken Dorsey for a minute. Let's talk about him too. Second half especially, they went heavy RPO, and it really, whatever success the Steelers were having on defense, which was minimal to begin with, but I think, like I said, the Steelers were hitting home with a couple blitzes in the first half, going RPO in the second half, totally erased it. Not that the Bills, again, needed it, but if they weren't, let's say the game was tied at the half, they still would have won by 20 because they could RPO anywhere they wanted to up and down the field.
So in RPO, a run-pass option, the Bills have an option to clearly run the ball or pass it. And those 2 high looks, you're always going to hand it off because you have a numbers advantage in the box. Well,
as the offense does.
It's the offense does. You're going to have more blockers, including Josh Allen, who's going to be a runner as the defense is going to look at it. But with the Steelers running so much single high look with that safety coming down, Josh Allen's like, all right, if y'all want to put y'all corners on islands against Gabe Davis, Khalil Shakir, and Stephon Diggs, cool, be my guest. I'm going to get 8-10 yards of pop. So Ken Dorsey, you know, I know a lot of times, I heard Joel Klatt say this over the weekend, sometimes offensive coordinators are the worst enemy because they get bored. Ken Dorsey did not get bored with that game plan.
Right.
You know what? You want to put your DBs in that predicament? Cool. I'm going to take advantage of it, and we'll get out of here all healthy.
We talked about Ken Dorsey before the year as being a guy who, you know, because it's his first year as a play caller, might struggle a little bit. And on the flip side, the advantage is if you have the advantage on offense talent-wise, which he's going to have almost every week, you know, that'll make up for whatever deficiencies you have. I think you hit a great point there that what Dorsey's been really good at the first part of the year is just saying, my team is better. I'm just going to go out and be better. I'm not going to do anything crazy. And, you know, the second half game plan was a huge shining example of that for sure. Give me some, Carl, other guys that might have stood out to you as we kind of close this out a little bit.
Demar Hamlin. And I know with Micah Hyde going down that we wanted to see either him or Jaquan Johnson, who was going to step up in that safety room opposite of Jordan Poyer. And Demar Hamlin, I'm not going to make any proclamations about, you know, going forward and who Bills keep, pay, yada, yada, yada. But I will say Demar Hamlin, that spot is his to lose the rest of the year. I don't think Jaquan Johnson, I mean, God forbid another injury.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to affect his play. 8 tackles, 6 solos, which in this game, as you know, you got to be able to tackle in space. And Demar Hamlin can do that. He also had a TFL. He's a former cornerback. I remember we were the same high school class. I remember him coming out of high school, and he was a corner. So I know that he can cover. He clearly has the ability to do that. And you combine that with his tackling ability. The Bills and Brandon Beane, once again, have found another guy on day 3 who they can just plug into their system. They're not going to ask to do too much. And you saw that on Sunday against the Steelers.
The guy I want to talk about is Terrell Dodson. Always been one of my favorite backup linebackers in the NFL. He was solid as expected, team leading 13 tackles, I think it was. Looked really good. I mean, if Tremaine Edmonds can't go for a period of time, or if they want to move on from him next year, Terrell Dodson can fill that spot. Now, he doesn't have the same size, speed, regimen, you know, underlying size there. He's not 6'5", who is? But everything else that you want to get out of a middle linebacker, Dodson can do. The one other thing I want to point out, so I chart pressures every game in terms of offensive line allowed and defense created. In this game, I had 12 different defensive players who had pressures. Now, some are blitzes. You know, the blitzes come in, they kind of get free. You know, Taron Johnson had a blitz where he just walked in and gets a pressure. But regardless, 12 different players is bananas. Different guys played late because you had some backups in, but that's still an awesome performance.
I mean, you got to think about it. You got 6 guys in the front 7, or front 6 now. Taron Johnson off the edge. You still had to have 4 backups who come into the game late, still making money moves like that. Shout out to Leslie Frazier dialing up those pressures and the guys winning the one-on-ones.
Yeah, the latter is, I think, more what you're talking about. All right. Thanks for watching and listening here to our film breakdown. We'll do it again every week, especially after this Chiefs game, which should be a whole lot of fun. He's Carl Jones. I'm Thad Brown. Click on something else here at RochesterFirst.com.